What happens when one of the biggest pop stars in the world sits down for what should be a routine morning show interview, and it turns into one of the most explosive moments in live television history? The tension between Taylor Swift and Katie Couric on Good Morning America went from professional to personal in a matter of minutes, and what unfolded shocked everyone watching. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about what went down. The interview started like any other. Katie welcomed Taylor to the show, and there was the usual exchange of pleasantries. The studio audience was excited, the energy was high, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Taylor sat down, smiled at the cameras, and prepared for what she probably thought would be another standard promotional interview. Katie opened with a question about Taylor's latest album, and Taylor gave a thoughtful answer about the creative process and what inspired the new music. The conversation flowed easily at first. They talked about songwriting, about the challenges of staying creative after so many years in the industry, and about how Taylor manages to keep connecting with her fans. It all seemed friendly enough. But then Katie shifted gears. She brought up Taylor's past relationships, something that has been a constant source of media attention throughout her career. Now, this is not new territory for Taylor. She has been asked about her dating life countless times, and she usually handles it with grace. But there was something different about the way Katie phrased the question. It was not just asking about relationships in general, it was more pointed, more personal. Katie said, "So Taylor, you have written songs about a lot of your exes over the years. Do you ever worry that people see you as someone who cannot maintain a long-term relationship? Or that maybe you are the common denominator in all these breakups?" The studio went quiet for a moment. You could see Taylor's expression change. Her smile did not exactly disappear, but it became tighter, more controlled. She took a breath and responded calmly, saying that she thinks it is interesting how male artists are celebrated for writing about their relationships and experiences. But when women do it, they get labeled as bitter or unable to move on. She pointed out that some of the most celebrated songs in history are about heartbreak and personal experiences, and she does not think she should be treated differently just because she is a woman. It was a measured response and honestly a fair point, but Katie did not let it go. Instead, she pressed further. She said, "But do not you think there is a pattern here? I mean, we are not talking about one or two relationships. We are talking about a long list of very public breakups. At some point, do not you have to ask yourself if maybe you are choosing the wrong people, or if maybe you are not ready for the kind of commitment that a serious relationship requires?" That is when things started to shift. Taylor's body language changed. She sat up a little straighter, and her tone became more direct. She said, "I think what you are really asking is whether I am the problem, and I find that question incredibly reductive. You are taking years of my life, relationships that were real and meaningful to me, and boiling them down to a tabloid narrative. That is not fair, and it is not accurate." Katie responded by saying she was not trying to be unfair, she was just asking the questions that a lot of people are thinking. She said that as someone who has been so open about her personal life through her music, Taylor has invited this kind of scrutiny, and it comes with the territory of being a public figure. Taylor fired back, saying there is a difference between being open in your art and having your entire personal life dissected and judged by people who do not know you. She said that yes, she writes about her experiences, but that does not mean every detail of her private life is up for public debate. She added that she has never claimed to be perfect, and she has made mistakes like everyone else, but that does not mean she deserves to be constantly questioned about her ability to have a healthy relationship. The tension in the studio was palpable at this point. The audience was silent, and you could tell the producers were probably panicking behind the scenes. This was live television, and it was going off the rails fast. Katie, to her credit, did not back down. She said, "I hear what you are saying, Taylor, but you have built your brand on being relatable, on sharing your life with your fans. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot share when it benefits you and then complain when people ask questions." Taylor's eyes narrowed. She said, "My brand is not built on being relatable, Katie. My brand is built on being honest. There is a difference. I share what I want to share, when I want to share it, and that does not give anyone the right to demand more from me. You are acting like I owe the world an explanation for every relationship I have ever had, and I do not." Katie leaned forward and said, "But you do owe your fans something, do not you? They are the ones who buy your albums, who come to your concerts, who support your career. Do not they deserve to understand the person they are investing in?" Taylor shook her head and said, "My fans understand me just fine. They understand me because I give them my truth through my music. What they do not need is for people like you to twist my life into some kind of cautionary tale about a woman who cannot find love. That is not who I am, and it is not the story I am telling." The conversation was escalating quickly, and it was clear that neither of them was willing to back down. Katie said, "I am not trying to twist anything, Taylor. I am just pointing out that there is a pattern, and patterns usually mean something. Maybe instead of getting defensive, you should take a moment to reflect on why this keeps happening." Taylor's voice rose slightly as she said, "Defensive? You ambush me with a question designed to make me look flawed, and then you tell me I am being defensive when I push back? That is not journalism, Katie. That is a hit piece disguised as an interview. You came into this with an agenda, and it is pretty clear what that agenda is." Katie responded sharply, saying that she does not have an agenda, she has questions, and as a journalist, it is her job to ask difficult questions. She said that if Taylor cannot handle that, then maybe she is not as strong as she pretends to be. That comment hit a nerve. Taylor said, "Do not talk to me about strength. You have no idea what it takes to stand on stage in front of thousands of people or to put your heart into your work knowing that people like you are going to pick it apart. I have been doing this for over 15 years, and I have dealt with more criticism and more scrutiny than you could ever imagine. So do not sit there and question my strength." The studio was dead silent now. This was no longer just a tense interview. This was a full-blown confrontation, and everyone watching knew it. Katie took a breath and said, "I think we need to take a step back here. This is clearly getting too heated." But Taylor was not done. She said, "No, Katie, we are not taking a step back. You started this, and now you are trying to walk it back because you realize how bad this looks. You wanted to paint me as someone who is broken or incapable of love, and when I called you out on it, you act like I am the one being unreasonable. That is not how this works." Katie tried to regain control of the conversation. She said, "Taylor, I think you are misunderstanding my intentions here. I am not trying to paint you as anything. I am simply asking questions that reflect what the public is curious about. This is what interviews are about, having honest conversations." Taylor was not buying it. She said, "Honest conversations are built on respect, and nothing about this has been respectful. You did not come here to have a conversation with me. You came here to get a soundbite, to create a moment that would go viral. And congratulations, Katie, you got it. But not in the way you wanted." Katie's expression hardened. She said, "You know what, Taylor? Maybe the reason you are so upset right now is because there is some truth to what I am saying. Maybe you do not like hearing it, because deep down, you know there is something to it. Sometimes the hardest questions are the ones we need to hear the most." Taylor let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. She said, "You do not know me, Katie. You do not know anything about my life beyond what you read in magazines or see on social media. You are sitting here making judgments about me based on gossip and speculation. And then you have the audacity to act like you are doing me a favor by asking these questions." Katie responded, "I am not basing this on gossip. I am basing it on facts. You have had multiple high-profile relationships that have ended, and you have written songs about every single one of them. That is not speculation, that is fact. And the fact that you are getting this upset tells me that maybe you have not really dealt with whatever the underlying issue is." Taylor's jaw tightened. She said, "The underlying issue is that people like you refuse to let women exist without constantly analyzing every choice they make. I date someone, and it is a story. I break up with someone, and it is a story. I write a song about my feelings, and it is proof that I am somehow damaged or unstable. But when men do the exact same thing, they are tortured artists. They are deep. They are complex. The double standard is exhausting, and I am tired of pretending it does not exist." Katie shot back, "This is not about gender, Taylor. This is about you. Stop hiding behind feminism every time someone asks you a tough question. Not everything is a conspiracy against women. Sometimes people are just asking legitimate questions about your behavior and your choices. The audience gasped. That comment was a line crossed, and everyone knew it. Taylor's voice went cold. She said, "Hiding behind feminism? You think that is what I am doing?" "I am pointing out a very real bias that exists in how women are treated in the media, and you are dismissing it like it is some kind of excuse. That is exactly the problem. You do not see it because you are part of it." Katie said, "I have spent my entire career fighting for women in journalism, so do not lecture me about bias. I have broken barriers and paved the way for women in this industry. I do not need you to tell me about the struggles women face." Taylor responded, "Then act like it. Because right now, you are doing exactly what every male journalist has done to me for years. You are reducing me to my relationships, questioning my worth based on my personal life, and acting like I owe you answers. If you have really spent your career fighting for women, then you should know better." Katie was visibly frustrated now. She said, "You are twisting my words. I never questioned your worth. I asked you about patterns in your relationships, and instead of giving a thoughtful answer, you turned this into an attack on me." Taylor said, "You want a thoughtful answer? Fine. Here it is. Relationships end. That is life. Sometimes they end because people grow apart. Sometimes they end because the timing is not right. Sometimes they end because one person is not ready for what the other person needs. And yes, sometimes they end because I made a mistake or because I chose someone who was not right for me. I am human, Katie. I make mistakes. But that does not make me broken. And it does not make me a cautionary tale. What it makes me is someone who has lived, who has loved, who has experienced heartbreak, and who has turned those experiences into art that millions of people connect with. So if you want to sit here and judge me for that, go ahead. But do not expect me to apologize for it." Katie paused, then said, "I am not asking you to apologize. I am asking you to take responsibility for your part in these situations. You keep blaming the media, you keep blaming society, but at some point, you have to look at yourself and ask what you could have done differently." Taylor's voice rose again. She said, "I do look at myself, Katie. I look at myself every single day. I analyze every decision I have ever made, every relationship I have ever been in, every mistake I have ever made. I do that because I care about being a better person, not because I owe it to you or anyone else. But what I am not going to do is sit here and let you use my pain as entertainment. My relationships were real. The people I dated were real. The heartbreak was real. And you are treating it like it is some kind of reality show plotline." Katie said, "You put it in your songs, Taylor. You made it entertainment. You cannot be upset when people treat it that way." Taylor stood up. She said, "There is a difference between sharing your truth and having it weaponized against you. I share my experiences because it helps me process them, because it helps other people feel less alone. But you are not trying to understand that. You are trying to tear me down. And I am done with this." Katie looked surprised. She said, "Taylor, sit down. We are in the middle of an interview." Taylor said, "No, we are in the middle of an interrogation. And I did not sign up for that. You crossed a line, Katie, and you know it." Katie's tone became firmer. She said, "I am doing my job. If you cannot handle tough questions, then maybe you should not be doing interviews." Taylor said, "Tough questions are fine. Disrespectful questions are not. And what you just did was disrespectful. You accused me of hiding behind feminism. You dismissed everything I said like my perspective does not matter. That is not journalism. That is bullying." Katie said, "I am not bullying you. You are being overly sensitive because you do not like what I am saying." Taylor said, "There it is. The classic defense. When a woman stands up for herself, she is being too sensitive. When she refuses to be pushed around, she is being difficult. You know what, Katie? I have heard that my entire career and I am over it. I am not going to sit here and be told that my feelings are invalid just because they make you uncomfortable." Katie stood up as well. She said, "You are making this about something it is not. I asked you legitimate questions, and you turned it into a gender issue." Taylor said, "It is a gender issue. The fact that you cannot see that is part of the problem. You would never ask a male artist these questions. You would never question whether they are capable of love or whether they are the problem in all their relationships. But because I am a woman, it is fair game. Katie said, "You are being ridiculous. I have interviewed male artists about their personal lives plenty of times." Taylor said, "Not like this. You have not. Not with this level of judgment. Not with this level of condescension. And you know it." Katie crossed her arms. She said, "You are putting words in my mouth. I have never treated male artists differently, and you assuming that I have is actually pretty insulting to me. I have built my reputation on being fair and balanced." Taylor said, "Fair and balanced would be asking me about my music first, not jumping straight into dissecting my personal life like it is some kind of problem that needs to be solved. Fair and balanced would be treating me like the artist I am, not like a tabloid headline. You did not come into this interview interested in my work. You came in interested in creating drama." Katie said, "I asked you about your album at the beginning. You are the one who made this dramatic by overreacting to a simple question." Taylor said, "It was not a simple question, Katie. It was loaded, and you know it. You asked me if I thought I was the common denominator in all my failed relationships. That is not a simple question. That is an accusation dressed up as curiosity." Katie said, "It is a valid observation based on publicly available information. If you did not want people to observe patterns in your life, maybe you should not have made your life so public." Taylor said, "I made my art public. There is a difference. My songs are not a documentary of my life. They are my interpretation of my experiences, filtered through creativity and emotion. But people like you treat them like they are evidence in a court case, like you can use them to prove something about who I am as a person. That is not fair, and it is not accurate." Katie said, "Then why do you name names in your songs? Why do you drop hints about who you are writing about? You want people to know. You want them to speculate, so do not act shocked when they do." Taylor's face flushed. She said, "I have never named names in my songs." "That is a lie. Other people make assumptions, other people connect dots, but I have never confirmed anything. And the fact that you are sitting here accusing me of doing that shows how little you actually know about my work." Katie said, "Easter eggs, hidden messages, cryptic lyrics. Come on, Taylor. You are not that naive. You know exactly what you are doing." Taylor said, "What I am doing is creating art. What you are doing is projecting your own assumptions onto it and then blaming me for your conclusions. I cannot control how people interpret my work, but I also should not be held responsible for every wild theory that gets thrown around on the internet." Katie said, "But you encourage it. You engage with your fans online. You drop hints. You play into the speculation. You have built an entire marketing strategy around keeping people guessing." Taylor said, "Engaging with my fans is not the same as inviting strangers to judge my personal life. My fans appreciate the artistry, the storytelling, the connection. They do not dissect my relationships like they are trying to find evidence of some fatal flaw. That is what the media does, and that is what you are doing right now." Katie said, "I am trying to have an honest conversation with you, but you are making it impossible. Every question I ask, you deflect. Every point I make, you turn into an attack. Maybe the problem is not me, Taylor. Maybe the problem is that you cannot handle criticism." Taylor said, "I can handle criticism just fine. What I cannot handle is disrespect. And that is what this has been from the start. You did not invite me here to have a conversation. You invited me here to tear me down on live television, and I am not going to stand here and let you do it." Katie said, "You are being paranoid. This is a morning talk show, not some gotcha interview. You are acting like I am out to get you, and that is simply not true." Taylor said, "Then why did you ask me if I was the problem in all my relationships? Why did you suggest that I am not capable of commitment? Why did you accuse me of hiding behind feminism? Those are not the questions of someone who is trying to have a respectful conversation. Those are the questions of someone who already decided what they think about me and is just looking for me to confirm it." Katie said, "I am asking the questions that reflect what a lot of people are thinking. That is my job. If you have a problem with that, then maybe you should not be doing interviews with journalists." Maybe you should just stick to softball interviews with people who will only ask you about your favorite color. Taylor said, "There is a middle ground between softball questions and character assassination, Katie. And you just crossed way over that line. You are not interested in understanding me. You are interested in making me look bad. And I am done giving you that opportunity." Katie said, "You are being childish. This is how the real world works. People ask tough questions and you answer them. You do not throw a tantrum and storm off." Taylor said, "I am not throwing a tantrum. I am standing up for myself. And if you think that is childish, then that says a lot more about you than it does about me. I have been in this industry long enough to know the difference between a tough question and a cheap shot, and what you have been doing is taking cheap shots." Katie said, "Everything I have asked you is based on facts. Your relationships are public record. Your songs are public record. I am not making anything up. I am simply asking you to explain the patterns that everyone can see." Taylor said, "Patterns that you have decided exist. Patterns that fit the narrative you want to tell. You are not interested in the truth, Katie. You are interested in the story. And the story you want to tell is that I am some kind of serial dater who cannot keep a relationship together. But that is not who I am, and I am not going to sit here and let you define me that way." Katie said, "Then who are you, Taylor?" "Because from where I am sitting, all I see is someone who writes songs about her exes and then gets upset when people ask about them." Taylor said, "I am an artist. I am a songwriter. I am someone who has spent half her life pouring her heart into her work, trying to create something meaningful, trying to connect with people. And yes, I write about my relationships, because relationships are a huge part of the human experience. But that does not make me a cautionary tale, and it does not give you the right to sit here and psychoanalyze me on national television." Katie said, "I am not psychoanalyzing you. I am asking you questions. There is a difference." Taylor said, "The way you ask the questions matters, Katie. The assumptions behind them matter. The tone you use matters. And all of those things have been dripping with judgment since the moment you brought up my personal life. You are not asking me questions to understand me better. You are asking me questions to trap me, to make me say something you can use against me. And I am not playing that game." Katie said, "You are being incredibly defensive for someone who claims to have nothing to hide." Taylor said, "I am being defensive because I am being attacked. And the fact that you cannot see that, or that you are pretending not to see it, is unbelievable to me. You are a woman in media, Katie. You should understand what it is like to be constantly questioned, constantly judged, constantly picked apart. But instead of showing empathy, you are doing the exact same thing to me that has probably been done to you 1,000 times." Katie said, "Do not compare your experience to mine. We are not the same." Taylor said, "You are right. We are not the same. Because I would never do to someone what you are doing to me right now. I would never sit across from another woman and try to make her feel small just to prove a point or get a headline. That is the difference between us." Katie said, "You are twisting everything I say. I am not trying to make you feel small. I am trying to get you to be honest." Taylor said, "I have been honest. You just do not like my answers. You wanted me to admit that I am the problem, that there is something wrong with me, that I am incapable of having a healthy relationship. And when I did not give you that, you got frustrated and started pushing harder. But I am not going to give you what you want, Katie. I am not going to trash myself for your entertainment." Katie's voice got sharper. She said, "Nobody is asking you to trash yourself. I am asking you to take accountability. There is a difference. You keep acting like you are a victim here, but you have had agency in every single one of these relationships. You chose these people. You chose to write songs about them. You chose to make your personal life part of your brand. So own it." Taylor said, "I do own it. I own every choice I have made, good and bad. But owning my choices does not mean I have to accept your judgment about them. You are acting like the fact that I have had relationships that did not work out is some kind of character flaw. And it is not. It is called being human. People date, people break up, people move on. That is normal. The only reason it is being treated like a scandal is because I am famous and because I am a woman." Katie said, Plenty of famous women have long-term relationships. Plenty of famous women get married and stay married. So clearly it is possible. The question is, why has not it been possible for you? Taylor stared at her for a moment, and you could see the anger in her eyes. She said, "You really do not see how insulting that question is, do you? You are basically asking me what is wrong with me that I have not found someone to settle down with. Like that is the ultimate measure of a woman's worth. Like everything I have accomplished, every record I have broken, every stadium I have sold out, none of that matters because I am not married." "That is the message you are sending right now," Katie said. "That is not what I am saying at all." "Stop putting words in my mouth," Taylor said. "Then what are you saying, Katie?" "Because it sounds to me like you are saying that my personal life is more important than my professional accomplishments. And that is exactly the kind of thinking that holds women back. Men are judged by their work. Women are judged by their relationships. And you are perpetuating that right now." Katie said, "I am not perpetuating anything. I am asking questions that are relevant to your public persona. Your relationships are part of your story, whether you like it or not." Taylor said, "My relationships are part of my life, not my story. My story is about my music, my creativity, my connection with my fans, the things I have built, the barriers I have broken. But people like you only want to focus on who I am dating or who I broke up with, because that is easier, that is more sensational, that fits into the narrative you want to tell." Katie said, "If your relationships were not important to you, you would not write entire albums about them." Taylor said, "They are important to me as experiences, as moments in my life that shaped me. But that does not mean they define me. I write about heartbreak because it is universal. I write about love because it is universal. I write about pain and growth and hope because those are things everyone can relate to. But you are treating my songs like they are a diary that you have permission to read and judge." Katie said, "You put them out into the world. Once you do that, they are open to interpretation and discussion." Taylor said, "Interpretation, yes. Judgment, no. There is a difference. You can interpret my songs however you want, but that does not give you the right to use them as evidence that there is something wrong with me as a person." Katie leaned back in her chair. She said, "I think you are taking this way too personally." "This is just an interview," Taylor said. "Just an interview? You have spent the last 15 minutes questioning my ability to maintain relationships, accusing me of using feminism as a shield, and suggesting that I am not capable of commitment. And you think I should not take that personally?" Katie said, "I think you are overreacting because you do not like being challenged. You are used to people treating you like you can do no wrong, and the minute someone asks you a difficult question, you fall apart." Taylor's voice was ice cold now. She said, "I am not falling apart, Katie. I am calling you out. And the fact that you think standing up for myself is the same as falling apart tells me everything I need to know about how you view women. We are supposed to sit quietly and take whatever criticism is thrown at us. And if we push back, we are emotional. We are difficult. We are overreacting. That is the playbook, and you are following it perfectly." Katie said, "You are being ridiculous. I have treated you with nothing but respect." Taylor laughed bitterly. She said, "Respect? You have done everything but respect me. You ambushed me with personal questions. You dismissed my perspective. You accused me of hiding behind important issues. And now you are gaslighting me by acting like none of that happened. That is not respect, Katie. That is manipulation." Katie said, "I am not manipulating you. You are being paranoid and defensive. And honestly, it is making you look worse than anything I could say." Taylor picked up her microphone pack and started unhooking it. She said, "You know what? I am done. I came here to talk about my music, to connect with fans, to have a normal conversation. But this has been anything but normal. You had an agenda from the start, and I am not going to sit here and be part of it." Katie said, "If you walk out of this interview, it is going to look really bad for you." Taylor stopped and turned to look at her. She said, "Worse than sitting here and letting you disrespect me on live television? I do not think so. At least if I leave with my dignity. If I stay, I am just giving you more ammunition to use against me." "So yeah, I am leaving," Katie said. "You are making a huge mistake." Taylor said. The only mistake I made was agreeing to do this interview in the first place. I thought you were a serious journalist, Katie. I thought you would treat me with professionalism. But this has been a hit job from the start, and I am not going to be part of it anymore. Katie said, You cannot just walk off. We are live, Taylor said. Watch me. She unclipped her microphone completely and set it on the chair. The studio was in complete chaos now. You could hear producers talking frantically in the background. The audience was murmuring, and Katie was sitting there looking stunned. Taylor turned toward the exit, and you could see the determination on her face. She was done, and nothing was going to change her mind. Katie called after her. She said, Taylor, if you leave, everyone is going to think you cannot handle criticism. Taylor stopped at the edge of the set and turned back one last time. She said, Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. I know who I am. I know what I have accomplished, and I know that I do not have to sit here and justify my existence to you or anyone else. You wanted a moment, Katie. Congratulations, you got one. But it is not the moment you were hoping for. And with that, Taylor walked off the set. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of it. Katie sat there, clearly unsure of what to do next. The producers were scrambling, the audience was in shock, and the interview that was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance had turned into one of the most talked-about moments in morning television history. The whole thing was a masterclass in how quickly an interview can go wrong when there is a fundamental lack of respect. Taylor did not storm off because she could not handle tough questions. She left because she refused to be disrespected on live television. And honestly, it is hard to blame her. Katie pushed, and when Taylor pushed back, Katie acted like she was the one being unreasonable. It was a clash of two very different perspectives on what an interview should be, and it ended in spectacular fashion. What do you think? Did Taylor do the right thing by walking off, or should she have stayed and finished the interview? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we will be breaking down more wild moments like this one. Seriously, what would you have done in Taylor's position?